Have you ever accidentally ran into a mailbox while driving? No. Yeah, neither have I. That's complete, absolute nonsense. But if you have, how do you explain that? I mean, it's an immovable object, it's stagnant, it's not going anywhere. It makes absolutely no sense that somebody would run into a mailbox. Not just a mailbox, I mean, who runs into a tree while driving? I don't know. It's a mystery, I suppose, but that's how I feel like McFarlane has been doing business the last couple of years. It seems like there's really no competition, regardless of what some people may think about, like the Mayfix line or the Mafix line or the SH Figuarts line, where they occasionally release DC action figures. They're great in their own right, and I'm sure there's quite a bit of a fan base, quite a bit of a following, but they're never going to compare to McFarlane and the type of impact that he's been having on the community as a whole. Not only because he is obviously giving us all these action figures, but he's been a part of the DC culture and the DC universe for, decades almost at this point, specifically with his comic book art. But the last 3 years have been kind of mind-boggling to me. Like I said, there's nobody really in his way. There's nobody really challenging him. Even Hasbro or other companies that are way more established than McFarlane have had their licenses for longer periods of time. It seems like McFarlane has found a way to outsell even those companies and been marginally more successful. I think success is a matter of perspective, but in terms of sales, in terms of units moved, he's definitely at the top, at least by, a lot of analytics out there. I'm not really going to get into it, but it definitely feels like that analogy at the beginning of the video. I just don't really understand what's happening, why he continuously runs into a brick wall, considering he has all the tools at his disposal to really be able to take over the game. However, I think recently he's really hitting a stride, even though there are still these like offshoot action figures that I think are absolute nonsense, that are so cringe. And I know there are a lot of people out there that defend a lot of these like store exclusive action figures. We have, for example, like the ridiculous repaints, for example, the Jokerized action figures that we've been receiving. I know a lot of people defend those. They make no sense to me. I think they're the laziest repaints that we'll ever see. I think they're absolute nonsense. But aside from those figures, he's been releasing some absolute fire, and I really do think that this may be the golden age for McFarlane collecting. And just to give you guys some examples, we did recently have the pre-orders go up for the new Wonder Woman, which is supposed to be a part of the collector's edition line. Yes, it is a bit pricier, but you are getting quite a few accessories. But how long have we been waiting to get a proper Wonder Woman? I would almost argue that McFarlane did it backwards. He was giving us like alternate universe or Elseworld versions of Wonder Woman instead of just giving us a classic design or a more like comic book accurate design and then kind of expand from there. It was really interesting, but regardless, he is giving us a fantastic version of Wonder Woman. And we've also gotten some pretty good versions of Batman, depending on what version you prefer or what era of comic books you would rather Batman represent. We did have, for example, the Nightfall Batman just recently released, and we've had a number of other different versions. We did have a Rebirth version not released not too long ago, and just the list goes on and on. Batman Detectives 1000 comic book version of Batman as well. That one was closer to the beginning of his DC license acquisition, but still it's a fantastic figure that I think really showcased what McFarlane was all about. We did also have the Arkham series video game Batman as well. And then don't even get me started on the different versions of Superman that he has been releasing. We're just getting the newer collector edition Superman that's supposed to come with the crypto figure. That one is kind of a little bit of a reuse. It's kind of like the 90s, I believe, like Return of Superman era, which is a great figure if that's your version of Superman. But the list goes on and on. We did also receive a comic 1000 Superman, and then eventually a Rebirth Superman Superman, and then the Dark Knight Returns Superman. So like I said, I know some of that is closer to when he first got the license, but it still bears repeating how good he has been doing in terms of giving us just a variety of different versions of each particular character. And I think that McFarlane is really hitting his stride. He's really doing a fantastic job. He's figured out the articulation scheme, even though from time to time he will give us like the Dark Knight Returns body mold, which I'm not a huge fan of for either Batman or Superman. Kind of very bulky, single jointed elbows. The articulation just isn't there. Even though the body mold looks fantastic, I think it would have been better for him to break it up a little bit just for the sake of articulation. But for the most part, he's figured it out. He's able to give, for example, the female characters double jointed elbows, double jointed knees, pretty good ab crunch, which I've mentioned this before, but for some unknown reason, other manufacturers are just not able to give good articulation to their female characters. And the list goes on and on. Great vehicle selection, for example. You can get the Bat Cycle, the Bat Raptor, a lot of great options, great accessories. We just got the 1989 Batmobile, for example. I think his action figure stand, while not perfect, I think is a pretty good representation of what collectors want to be able to hold up their figures. And even though, for example, the weapons pack wasn't necessarily made specifically for the DC Multiverse line, the fact that it came from McFarlane, it was relatively affordable compared to like third-party vendors that usually sell these accessories for a little bit more. You were able to port these on to the DC Multiverse line pretty easily. Obviously, his scale is perfect for his accessories, so it made perfect sense. And honestly, I think it's only a matter of time before he starts making these accessory packs specific for the DC Multiverse line. Only time will tell whether he decides to give us something like that. He also recently released or put up for pre-order the new Steel action figure, which is a phenomenal looking figure, and apparently from what I can see, it seems like it's all brand new sculpting. The only issue that I'm probably going to have with this figure is the lack of paint. It seems like it's just sort of like a gray plastic. There's some great sculpted detail, but not a lot of paint application to it. But regardless, it's a fantastic figure. We also got a Supergirl action figure not too long ago. There are multiple different versions of that particular character. We've also gotten some really iconic villains over the past years. So we got the Man-Bat action figure, the Bane action figure, which has gained an insane amount of value. And even though it's based on the video game franchise, I really like the new Brainiac action figure. You can kind of squeeze him into different multiple displays. Obviously, he's geared more towards the gamers, but I think for now it's a really good stand-in. It's only a matter of time before he decides to release a more classic iteration of him. We also got the new Lobo with his vehicle, which looks like McFarlane definitely spent quite a bit of time crafting and putting this figure together. Even though it is a re-release, he's continuing to give us something new, something inventive, something fresh. As I said at the beginning of the video, it hasn't all been perfect. I mentioned the Jokerized action figures, the collector's edition line, which for the most part has been fantastic, but he continues to give us these, for example, the useless card stands, which nobody wants, those ugly little display bases where you port the figure on, because a lot of these aren't able to stand on their own. But those are little minor issues. I think overall the line has been headed in the right direction, and they've been releasing some absolutely phenomenal action figures. I think this is the perfect opportunity to jump in. There are a few figures that I think are must-haves in displays that are astronomically high in prices, but I think it's only a matter of time before he decides to re-release a lot of these. For example, we have the Red Hood action figure, we have the Comics 1000 Superman, and a few other ones. Bane is another big one. But I think if we're patient, we'll get a lot of those figures re-released. So if you're looking to get into the line, this is just a perfect opportunity for you. But I'm very curious to see what you guys have to say. Do you guys actually think that this is what I like to call the golden age for McFarlane collecting, or the DC Multiverse line specifically? Or do you feel like maybe I am just making too much of it? Let me know down below in the comment section. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you.